Welcome Dragon Slayers, KD here, with a little bit a different video than normally. I'm doing my first game review, and I reviewed Uncharted 4, and I hope it will be a little bit different than most of the other reviews you normally find on YouTube. So I will make different chapters so you can jump forward if you don't want or only want to see different parts of the review. So the first part is the introduction, of course. Then after that I will talk about my motivation, because probably you already think, why would you do a review about the game that came out over a year ago? And I will kind of tell you why in the motivation part. Then I will tell you the scoring system. So the scoring system has a little bit to do with the motivation part, so I will talk about that afterwards. Then after the scoring system I want to kind of recap the trilogy, so Uncharted 1, 2 and 3. So really short, my impressions of the game. Game's not in-depth review about these games, because it's about Uncharted 4, not about the trilogy. But I also think the trilogy is important here, because Uncharted 4 is still still a strong origin in the Uncharted trilogy. So part of my review will be in mind of the trilogy, and some parts of the game I will judge it as a standalone game. I think that's important to kind of set these two things apart, but maybe you already saw the title and you see that the final verdict will be with the trilogy in mind. So I think this part is also important to recap the trilogy, Uncharted trilogy 1, 2 and 3. And then I will come to the I will do a short overall impression of Uncharted 4, and then after that I will do an in-depth review about Uncharted 4 with points, with the scoring system in mind, and just going more into detail. And then at the end, of course, I will do a verdict and kinda a recap about what I talked about. That's what I want to do. So we come to the next point, the motivation, and everything started actually with a review I watched on YouTube. It's an angry review from Angry Joe. You probably know him. So in general the reviews of Angry Joes are really good, and also this one is actually pretty good made. But I had some problem with it, that's why I'm kind of talking it now about it. So just to be clear, I really enjoy Angry Joe's content. I watch most of his reviews, more the game reviews. I'm not so interested in the movie reviews. So, and his content is a lot better than mine. I mean, absolutely, with the edited things and so on. So I don't want to complain about how he does his work. But like this one, I do some critical review, some critical content on my channel, and I want to do some more because there are a couple of other things I want to talk about. But yeah, anyway, and I stand behind the things I say. Maybe after a time some things changing, but in general I stand behind the things I say, and so I think I also can kind of bring critique to a bigger YouTuber than I am. So the problem I had with the video, I will put the link in the description. It's the review about Cuphead from Angry Joe. And it's like the review is really good made, so the whole video. He talks about the good things, he shows some gameplay, and so some things that he experienced while playing the game. Then he gave us some flaws and so on, but it was already clear that the good things are overwhelming, so it would get a pretty good score. So I thought something about 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. But seemed, because he makes points out up to 10. So I kind of had the feeling, so maybe 8 around there. And then he gave his final verdict and he gave it just a 10 out of 10. And I was like, what? But you just talked about the flaws the game has and so on, and you can't give it a 10 out of 10. Because what do you want to give the same game without the flaws you talked about? You can't give it a higher point than a 10. And then I kind of thought, why did he do that and so on. And the only reason I can think about is that even if his review was pretty structured and very objective and not maybe some personal preferences in it, but mostly very objective, the final verdict wasn't. The final verdict was very personal and had no really something to do with the review, and I can only think about why it's that, because the verdict was probably there before the review. And so I watched some other videos, and not only Angry Joe, other reviews, I had the same feeling, kinda like that people change their final verdict or have their kind of verdict before they even make the review, or change the review so the final verdict is like they want it to be. So maybe, yeah, I didn't like the game so much, so let's rather give it a point less or something like that, or I like the game and let's give it a point more. So and that kind of made me thinking, because I think that's the wrong way to go. So the thing I want to say is, like, I have nothing against personal preferences in a game review. That's why I like to watch game reviews and also see different opinions. I mean, that's the reason behind it. You have different opinions. If you would only score it objective, you will only have the same reviews over and over and over again, and that wouldn't be interesting. But the problem I have is, like, you can make the review personal, but you shouldn't do the final verdict so personal. There should be a system behind the final verdict, and that's kind of what I want to do with this whole review I do here. So the second point is why I chose Uncharted 4 is because I only do critical things. So mostly I do really just gameplay, and I just want to kind of show and the gameplay and enjoy the gameplay. But sometimes my opinion is different than the opinion of other people's, or of the mainstream opinion, and then I kind of have the feeling I have to say, to bring my opinion also into the conversation, and that's why I do these critical videos. And oh man, Uncharted 4 has some points I didn't hear so far by other YouTubers or game journalists I know. So I kind of want to put these points here in the ring, even if I'm a little bit late. That in the end doesn't really matter. Let's go to the pointing system. So it's actually pretty simple. I choose 5 categories I score the game for, and I have to say that the 5 categories, they're specific for this game. I think that's a point I want to make for the kind of review I try to do. And I don't know if I will do something the same in the future game review. It's possible, and then maybe there will for that game will only be 4 categories or maybe 6, 7 categories depending on the game. I mean, this is a game that has a very strong single player campaign, but it also has some extra contents and multiplayer. But there are games that only have single player campaign or only multiplayer campaign, and you can't give the same amount of categories for these games. I think that's just a important point I want to make. These 5 categories are specific for Uncharted 4 right now. I also want to say that I don't score these 5 points the same. That's just because I don't want to artificial invent points or search for more points I want to make, or take a point away, because it wouldn't be even like this. So the categories, they don't have to say, they're not even. Some have more points, some have less points. I just think as soon as I have to search for points, it won't be alright anymore. I think the points I want to make without searching for them are more important than the one I have to search for. And the 5 categories I make is the narrative, because Uncharted has a very strong narrative. Then gameplay and game mechanic. I know these are could be kind of the same. Absolutely in this game here. That's why gameplay is more the general gameplay, and game mechanics that already are established in the franchise. And game mechanics, I do more. I look more at the new mechanics that they put in Uncharted 4, and take every of these mechanics out and talk about it. Then the 4th part is presentation, and the 5th is extra content. That means multiplayer and the survival mode that Uncharted 4 has. So how do I give points? It's very simple. Things I like, I give 1 point, plus point. Things I don't like, I will give a minus point. And things I think are worth to mention, but they not really worth 1 point, or are not so bad that they are worth minus 1 point, they get the 0 point. So the 0 points you actually can kind of forget for the scoring. They're not important for that. Like I said, they're just things like I think they have to be mentioned, but yeah, in the end they won't get into the scoring system. So it's also not like I will not add plus points and take the minus points away. That I will do it different. There will be a maximum points and the score, and then I will take the percentage from this from that, and that will be the final verdict. So the maximum score will be plus points and minus points added, and the score itself will only be the plus points. So if I find 10 points and 6 of them are positive and 4 of them are negative, the final verdict will be 60% or 6 out of 10. If I find 15 points, or if I find 20 points and 15 points are positive, then the final verdict will be 75%. I hope that's kind of clear. So it's very simple, but also very systematic. And like I said, the points I give are very personal, but the end score will be very systematic. So what I want to say with that, I won't change the final score, because I would like it to be higher, and it also won't be lower because I want it to be lower. But the points I give are very personal. Okay, that's so much to the pointing system. So we go to the trilogy. What do I have to say to the trilogy? So the first part I was very impressed by, Uncharted Drakes Fortune, and there are a couple of reasons why I really liked the first one. So one part is that games at this time, they really came out with glitches and bugs that really that was kind of the beginning of the PS3 and Xbox 360's generation. So for me, the worst generation in gaming. I probably will make a video about that because I have to have many things to say about that. And so one of the reasons is that you could give these first day patches and things like that, and the publisher were more interested to bring out the game on time than really bring out the really fixed and polished game. And in this area, a game like Uncharted came out that just was so perfectly polished, and everything went was so wonderful to play so smoothly and so on. I was really impressed by it. Also, when you compare it to similar games like the Tomb Raider games from that time, or also when you look at the climbing a little bit at Assassin's Creed, it was just so much more polished than these games, and it had a really good impression. I had a really good impression with the game. And then Uncharted 2 came out, and many say it's the best game in this. It's the best game in the franchise, and I won't disagree with that. But for me, it didn't have that impression that the first one had. It was kind of like the gameplay was very similar and so on, and of course they polished the mechanics more. They gave us more, and it's definitely a really good sequel, but still this kind of first impression I had was missing. So it's difficult for me to say was Uncharted really better than 1 when I look at objectively without personal preferences and emotions and so on. Then yes, I would say yes, of course. But yeah, you kind of get what I want to say here, I hope. The problem with 2, what I thought was like at the end, I really already felt the kind of the franchise fatigue. So it kind of got very repetitive at the end of the game. Also, the end boss was not really good. So that's kind of something that Uncharted never really managed to do. I think they don't have really good end bosses, and I wonder why they even try to do it, because you don't have kind of this mid bosses or anything like that. So I kind of wonder why they always try to do an end boss. It's just so out of the norm, and anyway strange, and often just ends in some QTEs, some quick time events. So yes, and then Uncharted 3 came out, and it was, yeah, it was like the franchise fatigue just totally from beginning to the end was there. I didn't like it very much. It was very what you kind of expected, but nothing more. Not even the scripted parts that I think when you really want to say what's better in Uncharted 2 than 1, then it's all the scripted parts, the convoy chases and train sections and things like that. And you had you had some of them in Uncharted 3, but they didn't really feel like an improvement to Uncharted 2. Kind of felt more like, yeah, it's kind of the same. So to say that, I was really worried about Uncharted 4 because I had this experience with Uncharted 3 that I really got bored by the game and the gameplay, so I was really worried with Uncharted 4. And with that we go to the overall impression. I didn't buy Uncharted 4 when it released. I got it last year in 2017, early summer or maybe even spring, I'm not sure. And I got it on discount, of course. And I already read or heard or watched some reviews about Uncharted 4 and they were very positive. And also some of these reviews, they kind of talked about the problem with the franchise fatigue from Uncharted 3. And they said, yeah, Uncharted 4 is definitely an improvement to that. So I really looked forward to the game, and then I started gaming it, and I have to say the first quarter of the game, or just the start of the game, was a really disappointment for me, because it kind of really felt like exactly what I was afraid of. It was just too much Uncharted. I mean, they introduced the new game mechanics, but they didn't, at this point, they didn't really felt so special. It was still the normal Uncharted things that was kinda overwhelming. They kinda improved the fighting system, but you don't use it so often. That's kinda sad, because I kinda like the changes they did in the fighting hand-to-hand combat. That's kind of changed. They kind of took away the whole scripted things with square and then triangle, and they kind of made it more free. That's what I really liked. It was kind of at the beginning kind of hard to adapt to that, but at the end it kind of came. It wasn't enough, I think, or they didn't use it so much. Like many of the mechanics, we come to that. I talked too much already about this, about some of the mechanics. Then in the middle part, the game really showed his potential. I'm talking here mostly about the scripted parts. Again, like in every Uncharted, you have a convoy chase and things like that. They were just amazing. I think they were really good, polished and fun parts, and really in these sections I just enjoyed the game more, because it just brought more diversity in it. It wasn't the same over and over again. But then at the end it went a little bit down again, because the franchise fatigue just came kind of back. The scripted parts got less, and it was more the things you know again and so on. But then there came the epilogue, and I think the epilogue is really the star of the whole game. It may sound strange, but I found it really great, and it was really the part that took me over, that the game was really great and that I kinda want more again. So when I finished Uncharted 3, I was like, yeah, okay, we have a trilogy, we can now focus on something else. I don't really need a new Uncharted, and now I think, mostly thanks to the epilogue, that yes, I want Uncharted 5. Please do something in this direction again, and we will talk about that a little bit later. So that's kind of before we go to the detailed review, that's kind of the thing so my general impression of the game is like, at the beginning a really disappointment, then it went up as the game went on. It got a little bit boring at the end again, and then the epilogue was just amazing. So the detailed review. First we talk about the narrative, and first I want to talk about the overall impression and look at Uncharted 4 as a standalone game, so the story without thinking about the trilogy, and then later on I will also consider the trilogy. I will do that like this because I think the problems with the story really come up when you consider the trilogy. So I kind of make this separate here. And the first thing is the overall impression, and that's really positive because I think in general the characters are pretty good written, they're good acted, they're of course good animated and so on. Sometimes the narrative is a little bit too strong, absolutely at the beginning. I talked about that I was at the beginning disappointed. I kind of had the feeling that the gameplay was more smashed into the narrative, so the player had some gameplay and the narrative didn't feel so overwhelming, and that's why maybe at the beginning I didn't like the game so much, because it kind of felt pressed in and sometimes too short and too less new things and so on. But a little bit more to that in another point later. I have two, I wouldn't say problems, but I think the story, if I don't look at the trilogy right now, because like I said, then the real problems come up, but if I just look at it as a standalone game, I have two weak points I see in the story. The one thing is the what's his name, Alcazar or something like that, the drug lord that is in prison with Sam and then breaks out with Sam. So they're kind of cellmates, and then they break out together out of the cell, and and that's because the drug lord's motivation is he knows about the treasure that Nate and Sam were looking for, and he kind of wants to pressure Sam to look for the treasure again. So Sam goes to Nate and they look to, and he tells him about that, and they look for the treasure again. And then we just suddenly find out that all of that was just not true. There was no Alcazar and so on. I didn't think that was like a great twist or something like that. It was just like pretty weak, I thought. And the reason why I believe they put that even in the game is that, like I talked before, that we have this prison breakout at the beginning. Otherwise we wouldn't have this action scene there. And like I said, the narrative would be very, very overwhelming, because we would jump from this scene with Nate in the ocean and coming out of the ocean and talking about the ship and so on, and the whole thing with Elena, and then we will directly jump into Nate with Sam, and all the things, all the story elements would be together, and with that we kind of loosen that up and we have this kind of shooting scene between. But the problem is, like I said, they build up a very weak spot in the storyline, I think, because I don't think that Nate would say no to Sam even without this whole background story, because we all see that Nate he wants kind of a new adventure even at this point. Then the second thing I think was pretty weak in the story was this whole thing with the relationship between Elena and Nate, and it was just kind of strange because he was lying to her and I didn't really see why he was lying, why he couldn't say the truth. and she knew that something was wrong, and we had kind of conversation over the phone or things like that, and then it was just like there was this, they build up this problem, and then it was cut, and then it was Nate alone or Nate with Sam, and we climbing some rifts up or something like that and shooting hundreds of enemies and things like that, and we totally forget about this conflict with Elena, and then there's the next cutscene, and then the conflict comes up again, and then we forget about it because it's gameplay again, and then she suddenly just shows up, and then the whole thing was kind of okay because Nate was injured, so it was kind of everything is okay now. So I kind of found that pretty weak. I mean, we always had in the trilogy this kind of tension between Elena and Nate. They of course liked each other, but they also kind of hated their guts, and but this tension you always had it when the both were together, and that's why it worked that in these games. But now they're not together, and the tension feels so off. It kind of feels like they want to put that in the game, but they want more concentrate on Sam and Nate. So I think they build up a problem in the narrative that didn't really need to be there. There was enough things that hold the story together. We didn't need that the kind of conflict with Nate and Elena. So it's not like really bad, but I kind of find it a weak point, or even sometimes pretty off. Because, I mean, to say it really hard, I didn't really care about that point because you were not in the household of Nate and Elena. You were on a island, or something like that, and you want to look around the island and not think about the other stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of weak points, but still, I would say overall, I have to give a point to the narrative. In overall, there are some problems, but still, it was entertaining, and so a plus point. Then another plus point, I already talked about it, is the ending. I gave for the ending an extra plus point, just because, like I said, I really liked it. It brings the story really nice together, and also what I liked is like the opportunity they have now with a sequel of Uncharted. I mean, they already showed that some other people could be the main character, but when we look at the epilogue, there are some other pairings we can already see. It's like they could do a sequel with Sam and Sally. That would be really interesting because Sam is a different character than Nate. So that would be for sure interesting, but what I really would like to see, and what I also think the Uncharted series franchise kinda needs, because it kinda needs something new now. I mean, they can still add things and add more things, but I don't think that they really will get out of the franchise fatigue at this point. So what I really would like to see is with Nate and Elena's daughter, if they proceed with her, and I forgot her name. So yeah, but when they will proceed with her and then make her really inexperienced, not like all the other characters that already have these unbelievable skills with guns and can climb up the biggest mountain they find without taking a breath and things like that. It would be really interesting to be with someone that doesn't have these established skills, and you kinda start to learn a little bit more and more. Maybe something they did with the Tomb Raider series would be kind of similar. But that's just me. That's just personal. I think that would be very interesting. I just don't think that if they go a lot longer, like with this established characters that already can do everything, that the series will go very far. So with that overall impression at the end, I give 2 points here, and then we switch and we look at the story with the trilogy in mind. So the one thing I really have problems with, let's talk about that, is the grappling hook, or some call it grappling rope or something like that, but you know what I mean, the grappling hook. I call it grappling hook, and how they put it into the story. The problem is the grappling hook, it wasn't the first time introduced in Uncharted 4, it was introduced in Uncharted 2, and there is the Malaysian guy, what was his name? Sorry, I have sometimes a little problem with names. I think Tan or something like that. And I hope the ones that at least played Uncharted 2, they know about who I speak. And Tan is the companion for some parts of the game for Uncharted 2, when you're in the Himalaya region. So you wander around with him. He's kind of your guide. And then he finds a grappling hook with some dead travelers. I think they're I'm not sure if they're the Nazis that looked for the treasure some time ago, or some other group. I don't really remember. But he finds this grappling hook, and the problem is him and Nate, they stand between a cliff, and they have to go over it. And then Tan, I call him just Tan, sorry when his name is different, he wants to use the grappling hook by throwing it at the wooden log that looks out of the part of the mountain, and Nate is looking at him and kind of makes fun of him and says, you never do it in 100 years, or say something like that. Just makes fun about him, and then Tan just throws the grappling hook, can fix it, and jumps or swings over the cliffs, and Nate is honestly impressed at this point. And then he follows Tan, and as you go deeper, further in the game, it's always Tan that uses the grappling hook, and never Nate. Nate is never using it. He just uses it after Tan already did all the work, let's say it like this. So let's jump forward to Uncharted 4. What does the story tell us in Uncharted 4? That Sam taught Nate already how the grappling hook works, and that when he was a child. So in Uncharted 2, of course, Nate is not a child anymore. So we already have there a really big conflict. And the other problem is like that they immediately get like the experts for these grappling hooks, the Drake brothers. They're suddenly so strong with that, so overwhelmingly strong with that. So you just have to wonder, yeah, not only the problem with the story in Uncharted 2 and how they introduced the grappling hook there, it's also, yeah, when this is such a big thing for them already as a child, why did Nate never use it in 1, 2 and 3? That's the thing that, I mean, maybe you guys think that's not so important, but for me it was really important because it's totally off. It's not what they established in the trilogy so far. And many people, they complain about the grappling hook in Batman Origin, because they say the Batman used a prototype in Arkham Asylum, and Batman Origin is before that. But I mean, that was not even developed by the same team. And Uncharted is by Naughty Dog. And that really bothers me that they kinda, I don't think they really forgot about it. They just thought, yeah, they can get away with it, and they kinda did, because no one is bothered by that except for me, or at least it feels like that. And yeah, I just have to give the grappling hook a minus point. I would like to give it like 10 minus points, but that's not how my system works. I can only give 1 minus point for that. Second part is or the second thing I didn't like is Sam. Or yeah, now that's maybe wrong. It's not like I don't like him. I don't like how they established him, like the grappling hook. When I first heard about him, about Nate as a brother, and so kinda with the orphanage thing, I kinda had the feeling, yeah, maybe they're not blood related. Maybe they just call each other brother because they were good friends in the orphanage and very close there. But as soon as I played the game and they introduced Sam as his blood relative, I already knew that can't get good, and it didn't. Some say, or some reviews I heard was like, no, you kind of feel that that of course Sam was never planned, but it works because Nate thought Sam was dead, and he was so sad that he never talked about it. So I have a couple of problems with that. Maybe I go for that later. Let's start at the beginning. So Nate and Sam, of course, they know each other since they were little childs, because they're brothers, and they know each other in the orphanage. And then Sam leaves the orphanage, and I assume, because it's not really established, that later on we see is the back story we have in Uncharted 3, and the backstory in Uncharted 3 is that Nate goes to the museum to find an artifact, and he met Sully for the first time there. And like I said, they kind of should have established kind of like the timeline there, because there are some confusing things. I mean, things that are possible, but that for me personally needed some more explanation. So the problem here we have, or what's not the problem, is like in 3 we see, like, I think Nate sees in Sully some father figure, and that's why he's getting attached to Sully, and why they get, after this first meeting, pretty close to each other, and probably be together for the most of the time after that meeting, that first meeting. So I think it's strange, or at least it needs an explanation. Maybe there is an explanation and I forgot it, but I kind of have the feeling I would have remembered it. Yeah, I just think, because later on Nate will go to the prison with Sam, and they will look for the treasure there, and Sully is not part of that, and I think that's really strange, because like I said, Nate and Sully, they're already so close, so why wouldn't he not even consider to work with Sully, but instead working with what's his name, Rafe or something like that, with the guy that will be the enemy at the end. But I already found pretty strange, because why didn't he work with Sully? And yeah, the whole thing I think just needs more. It's not like it feels too off, but at least I need a little bit more explanation. Absolutely, because they already showed us in Uncharted 3 this kind of backstory with Nate as a child and meeting Sully, and we don't really know when in the story it is. I just assume it's after the things with Sam happened in the orphanage, but I can't be really sure about that, of course. So that's kind of the problem I have with that. Even worse, it's that in Uncharted 4 we learn that Sully and Sam meet the first time in the auction house. So that means in the whole parts before, in all this backstory we established they never met, and that's again, I don't believe that. You have to give me a good explanation for that. Then we come to the part that, like, yeah, he was so sad because he didn't want to talk about Sam, so that's why we never heard of him in 1, 2 and 3. I don't believe that for two reasons. First reason, Nate not talking about something. Nate gets shot by 10 people and he will still talk non-stop and make stupid jokes. He will climb a tower, the biggest tower that you can imagine. He still will talk the whole time. And do you want me to believe that he doesn't want to talk about his brother? I don't believe that. No, not really, no. And I mean, the second problem is, like, okay, maybe with Elena, with some other characters, okay, he maybe never talked with them about Sam. But, like I said, Sully, he should know about Sam, because he met Nate when he was younger, and when Sam was still, not still alive, but when the accident didn't happen yet, that happens in the prison. That, so yeah, I'm sorry, I don't believe it. It could have been be done better. Like I said, why does it have to be a blood relative? Couldn't he be just really someone, really good friends, someone he's really close with, that he knows from the orphanage? That could have been enough motivation for the whole rest of the story, without making it so unbelievable that that he never talked about, that we never heard about Sam. There are also some different parts, I think in Uncharted 3, I don't know what her name is, but I mean the main enemy there, she kind of talks about Nate's past, and she never talks about Sam, of course, because not even Naughty Dog knew about Sam at this point. And yeah, you just kind of feel that, and I think the whole thing with Sam could have been done better, and that's why I give Sam another minus point. So that's it for the narrative. I give for the narrative 2 plus points and 2 negative points, and we come to the overall gameplay. So for the overall gameplay, it's kind of what I already said in the overall impression. At the beginning, disappointment, then a really high in the middle, and then at the end it got a little bit boring again. But because the high was so great, I'm kind of positive for the whole overall gameplay. I mean, when I look at it, it doesn't really bring much new stuff. It's still a cover shooter. It's a very good polished cover shooter, but it's still a cover shooter. And also the climbing, they also introduced new mechanics there a little bit, but it still feels the same. So the kind of this point, if I would only look at this points, it would be a 0. But like I said, where the game really shines is by the more scripted mechanics, like the convoy and things like that. And also the one thing I really remember, and I probably will always remember because it had a really big impact when I played it, and that was when you go to this island region that's kind of open world. You can look around for treasures, find treasures there and so on, or you can more go with the story. And when you start this chapter, it's really nice weather, and then the weather changes slowly. The great thing is, like, you can go fast through this level with just focusing on the main missions without exploring and things like that, or like I said, you can take your time exploring. And the weather changes, they not really affected by that. They will still come slowly, and that I found first very impressive. Second, why I had such a big impression of that is because it was summer when I played the game, so it was pretty hot here where I live. And when I played this map, this part on the island, I suddenly felt chilly. I suddenly got cold, and I was like looking outside, and it was midday. The sun was still up and burning hot, and there was no clothes or something like that that could disturb that. So at this point I didn't realize that the weather in the game changed, and then at this point when I tried to find out why I suddenly feel cold, I kind of found out that this weather is changing, and that's why it has such a strong impression for me. And I never felt something like that in a game. I mean, maybe the narrative or so gave me some emotions, or I felt anger when something not is working or something like that, but I never felt hot or cold because of a game, and that was really impressive for me, to be honest. And that's why I say I probably will never forget. And that's why in the overall game mechanics I will give 2 points. One for the overall impression, because it's at the end, it's some parts still maybe didn't really improve, but still overall I have it improved with all the scripted parts and so on, with all these factors. So I give a point for that, and I give an extra point for the island because of this impression I talked about. So let's go to the game mechanics, where I talk about the new mechanics they introduce. One thing is the grappling hook. We have to talk about that again. So I already said negative things about that, how they introduced it. So I have to say, as a mechanic itself, it's really polished. It brings a new dimension to the game, not only for climbing but also in battle, because it's so easy to use. And I just really think they could have established it different. I mean, why did they had to learn it already as a child? I mean, maybe Tan could show Nate how the grappling hook works, and that's why he just learned it for the 4th part. But I mean, if you look at Lost Legacy, suddenly everyone can use a grappling hook like master. So yeah, for me it's that part is just like, yeah, they really fucked up there, for me personally, because I don't see many people complaining about that. Anyway, like I said, for the mechanic, it's really polished. It's like all the other things, very smooth to use and so on. Sometimes, like when I have a little complaint, is that sometimes they could have done. I kind of think they could have done more puzzling areas, maybe a little bit more difficult areas. I think everything was. The climbing was a lot easier than you kind of seen in Uncharted 1. But I think it was already in Uncharted 1 were probably the most difficult part. So I mean, they could have done a little bit more harder, just harder parts, but in the climbing, so it didn't feel so always a little bit the same. But overall, I have to give the grappling hooks for the mechanic plus point. Then we have the sliding. That's also quite new. At least I think they had maybe some parts in 2 or 3 where you slide, but it was more some scripted parts. It wasn't an established mechanic there. That's why I put it here, and I think they again really missed an opportunity there. It's the same like I talked about the fighting. They improved. They missed some opportunities there. They could have done more with that. I don't want to talk about the fighting more. It would, if I had to give a point, I would give it a 0 point, and the same for sliding. I give it a 0 point because every time you slide like down a hill or something like that, the only thing you have to do is at the end jump at the before you fall down, and then you can use the grappling hook, and that's like 90% of all the time you slide. There is no like obstacle or something between, maybe something that can impale you that you see in other games or something like that. There's just like you have to jump at the end on the right time. There's also not like you have to maybe a longer area where you have to look where to slide, and if you go the wrong way you just fall down and die or something like that. They really missed an opportunity there to do more with the sliding. And also these parts where I more think they were really dumb, where you had this not go down, slide down, but go sidewards, and then you just slide, jump, slide, jump, slide, jump, slide, jump, and I thought that was really not necessary. It just looked really stupid. That's why I think sliding, I mean the animations and overall looked really nice and so, but they could have done more there, so sliding I give 0 point for that. Then we come to stealth. Yeah, stealth is also not a new thing, but they kinda, but again, how they introduce it, they kind of put new functions in it, new mechanics with the diamonds over the heads of the enemies and things like that change colors, and as soon as they are red they see you. And just how they established it, I would still say it's a new mechanic. I mean, you could already kind of sneak in already in the first Uncharted, but it was more like killing 1 or 2 guys and then start shooting. It was not like you could do whole sections with stealth alone. That wasn't possible there. And in Uncharted 2, and that's strange because everyone was complaining about that, they put the stealth section in there at the beginning and kind of in the museum, and kind of I heard people complaining about that, but I never heard people complaining about the stealth, or at least not so big about the stealth section in Uncharted 4, and I have a lot more trouble with the stealth section in Uncharted 4 than I had with the Uncharted 2 one, because the place where it is in Uncharted 2, it makes sense to have a stealth section there, because you're in a museum and you don't want to push the alarm and alarm everyone. And in Uncharted 4 there are often sections that it's not needed, because it's a big open area and you have like 20-30 enemies, and you can't, it's not even possible to learn every pattern of every enemy. And it's not like we play Metal Gear Solid 5 with stealth game with all these opportunities you have, like non-lethal, lethal, silenced weapons and so on. You don't have this opportunity. So I found it really annoying. I mean, there is this part in the auction house where I think it was the first time you really had to use stealth section, except for the small tutorial section. And there I thought, yeah, it works there because you have a more narrow area and there were not many enemies you had to look out for at once, so it kind of worked in this section. But then as soon as it opened up, and the stealth just felt annoying. So now you can tell me, yeah, you don't really have to use the stealth section there, you can just shoot through, but I played it on normal and I already found it very difficult when I didn't use stealth to go through some sections, so I kind of was forced to do stealth. And I mean, I also want to play it on high difficulty, so I can't go around this stealth section, and they just come over and over and over again, and it's so overused. And the problem I have with that is that Uncharted has very strong high-paced sections, and then but also many low-paced sections. So low-paced, I'm talking about the narrative, talking about the more open areas where you can look for treasures. I'm of course talking about the climbing parts. And fast-paced are, even if it is cover shooter, because it's so smooth and everything like that, it's still a very high-paced shooter. And then of course there's all the scripted area. So if you have now really at almost every point a stealth part, or at least at the beginning stealth, you just change the high-paced part of the cover shooter into a low-paced stealth section, and then the game just has too many really low-paced parts, and then you kind of only have the scripted parts, the convoy chases and things like that, that's are really high-paced, and that's for me not enough. I don't, and for me Uncharted is just not a stealth game, it's not a stealth shooter, it's a cover shooter. So so I was really annoyed by this stealth, by so many stealth parts. It just didn't feel right for me. It's a little bit better in Lost Legacy, I have to say. I think it's easier to shoot your way through there. They maybe kind of optimized it, but in Uncharted 4 it's just a really nuisance. I didn't like it at all, so I have to give it a minus point. Then we come to the AI. I think you see really a jump from the AI from the trilogy to Uncharted 4. In the trilogy you had kind of like 3 types of enemies. One type were the normal types with different guns and rifles and pistols and so on, and they kind of looked for a cover, and then they would shoot behind the cover at you, or just shoot at you a little bit maybe in the open. And then you had the shotgun guys that just with mostly heavy armor that just slowly walked to your cover, and you had to kill them before they came behind your cover. And then you had the guys with the special guns, sniper rifle and grenade launcher and so on, and they were kinda on fixed positions and didn't really move except you shot at them, then they had a kind of animation, and that was all. And in Uncharted 4 you really see that the AI tries to do more, tries to annoy you more, tries to flank you, and that's kind of why it's even in normal modes almost harder than all the trilogy before, because the most annoying thing in a cover shooter is when the enemy starts to flank you. So I don't want to say that's something very negative, because that brings a little bit more dynamic in it. It makes the game harder, of course. But if you exchange that with stealth, then it's maybe troublesome for me. Say it like that. Still, I have to say, is the AI like not? I mean, like I said, the AI made really a jump from the Uncharted trilogy to Uncharted 4. But let's compare it to other games, and then is it such a big deal, the AI? And then you kind of have to say, nah, it's not that big of a deal. So kind of intended to give it 1 point, but then is it enough for 1 point? And then I kind of had the feeling no. So I kind of made a compromise here, and there is this really sweet nostalgic part where you play Banjo-Kazooie for a short time, and I would say, yeah, Banjo-Kazooie, that doesn't give a whole point, and AI doesn't give a whole point, but together maybe they give a whole point. So I give a 1 point, still 1 plus point there for the AI combined with Banjo-Kazooie. So we have for the mechanic 2 plus points and 1 negative point. Then we come to the presentation, and of course the presentation is in general positive, but I have to say it's kind of what you expect from Naughty Dog or a AAA game today, that it just looks amazing. And like I said, characters look amazing, their animations are believable or very realistic, and of course all the levels look amazing, like always. If I have a little complaint there, then the thing at the end, the ruins of the pirate city, it kind of felt too much like Uncharted. It's like you have seen ruins so many times, it kind of felt old at this point. That's the only complaint I really have. But on the other hand, like I said, it's expected, so I don't want to give it too much worth here, because it's not like Persona 5. In Persona 5 they do with less a lot more, if you understand what I mean. And if I would now review Persona 5, I probably will give look a lot more at the presentation and try and give more points there. But here, like I said, it's kind of what I expect, and I don't go to count the fibers of the hair and look how they are animated or anything like that. For that, I'm just not so much interested in the graphics. That's not so important for me. So for the overall good impression here, I give just 1 point. And then we are already at the last point, and that's the extra content, multiplayer and survival mode. So I really had trouble with the multiplayer at the beginning, because I'm really against it to put a multiplayer in a game. Yeah, I'm really against that. That's maybe because I'm more single player. I like more single player campaigns than online. If a game has single player campaign and online, I will really play first a single campaign before I go to jump to the multiplayer. And I really think Uncharted 4 has such a strong such a strong campaign that you don't really need the multiplayer. So I already went into the multiplayer with I already played it in Uncharted 2 and I wasn't so into it, and I knew I wouldn't be in Uncharted 4, and I really wasn't so much. So at first I wanted to give it a minus point, but I thought that wouldn't be fair. So I played it a little bit longer, and one problem is every time I want to play Uncharted 4, the multiplayer, I just told me, yeah, let's do first a trial, or let's go to the first, let's do a round of survival, let's do some stages there, because they were just more interesting for me, because I personally think the gameplay of Uncharted 4, it just works a lot better against AI than against other people. And that's why I kind of was like, oh, let's go to the survival, because that's against AI, and that's just, like I said, I think that's where the game mechanics work. Against other players it doesn't work so, because as soon as you start kind of go into cover and try to get this shot out with an enemy, then maybe some other enemy will spawn behind you, and then your cover is for nothing and things like that. That is just really annoying, and just against the whole mechanic. Also, I have to say, I don't think there are really interesting game modes. There is like the team deathmatch, there is King of the Hills. What King of the Hills is, you have to capture a point on the map and then hold it, so it's kinda nothing new or special there. Then there is, I don't know the name, where mode where one side has a commander, and then when it's on your side you of course have to defend the commander and as long as possible and gain points, and then when the enemy has the commander, then you have to try to kill the commander. And the problem is with that, because it's kind of so focused on one guy, and maybe when he stays stationary it's just the same game like Capture the Hill, I think, or it kind of felt like that. Absolutely, as soon as they can kill it, it's like it won't immediately change the captain to the other team. First it will stay a couple of times there, so, and the team that kinda can hold this position, that gets points. So it's the same like Capture the Hill. Then there is a mode that kinda combines these two each other. I didn't really had the chance to play it because I couldn't find the players, and yeah, I didn't have the patience to really like, yeah, I have to do this mode. And then there is the relic hunt that had kind of the same problem here, but I think it's similar to the game mode you already seen in Uncharted 2, so that's probably nothing very new or special. Then there is also the problem that it takes so long for the matchmaking. I think even if you find immediately players, sometimes you just get stuck in the loading thing, and everything takes so long. That was also pretty annoying, so that's why I wanted to give a minus point. But on the other hand, I have to say there are also good things. It's like the matches are mostly, the ones I played were pretty even most of the times. Sometimes my team was better, sometimes the enemy team was better, but still when the enemy team was better, I wasn't frustrated or anything like that. I still played. Or even when I mean, it's like 5 versus 5, so when one team loses a guy because he rage quits or something like that, you're of course immediately like weaker than the opponents, but still then the game was kind of fun. It was not like Call of Duty where the guys that are better getting the kill streak, and then it's just unplayable for the losing team. It's not like that, and like it's kind of fun, but for me, I just have to say, why do I want to play more of that? And I had actually only one real motivation, and that was to get the trophies. But you also can get most of the trophies actually in the trial mode, and then the other motivation is maybe to get to grind a higher level and to get all the things, all the cosmetics and things like that. But yeah, I don't really see that why I should do that. I mean, if I didn't have anything else to play, then yeah, maybe. And the cosmetics are also getting the survival mode. So for me, I didn't have really a motivation to go back into the multiplayer except for this review. And but still, I can see why some people have fun with it, with the multiplayer, and want to get better there. Absolutely, if they don't have a lot more alternatives to play. So I mean, I had at this time a lot of games I wanted to play, so I didn't really want to stop the multiplayer there. But I can see if you don't have this diversity of games like I have, then you maybe really enjoy the multiplayer mode. So in the end, after a lot of talking, I give 0 points for the multiplayer, but plus 1 point for the survival mode and the trial mode together, because they really surprised me. I'm normally not so into these wave fights because yeah, they're very repetitive, but I think they did a really good job here with the of course leveling progression system, and also with the variety of the different waves. So they put a lot of things in it, and you also have like these mystics and things like that, so you can kind of do different have different strategies and so on. That's, I think, very interesting, and I still enjoy to play it. Also, they give you different challenges, like they have some fixed stages. There are 50 waves in 10 stages. They're fixed, and you can get stars there depending on how fast you defeat the different waves. Or you can just jump into an arena, and then it will kind of randomly choose your waves, and then it goes up to 10. And so there's a kind of a lot to do there. So it's fun, and like I said, the gameplay against the AI, and because they don't put sneaking or stealth section in there, it's high paced and fun to play. I really enjoy it. But so I talked a lot. The video is a lot longer already than I wanted it to be, but yeah, it's okay. It's my first review. Maybe I will learn some things from this review, but let's go to the final verdict. And I got 8 plus points and 3 negative points, minus points. That makes a total of 11 and a score of 8. That's 72% or a 7 out of 10. And I hear you guys screaming already, that's way too low. So let's take out, let's look why it's so low. And I gave 2 minus points in the narrative. That's the grappling hook. And 1 minus point for the Sam. For Sam. And just how weak they're implemented in the whole story. It really bothered me through the whole game, and so I just can't ignore that. And these are the main reasons why I actually did this review, because not many people talk about that. and it's something that really bothered me, and yeah, I can't just leave it be. Then we got another minus point for the stealth. So like I said, if you look at my title, I said Uncharted 4 is a great game but a bad sequel, and now it kind of comes together because you have 2 minus points because of this, because it's a sequel, because they implemented SAM and the grappling hook so badly. And if you take out this 2 negative points, then you have an 8 out of 9. So I mean, the stealth section, I will probably give it a minus, even if I didn't play the 1, 2 and 3 because it was kinda annoying. Probably, I'm not sure, maybe I wouldn't give a minus there. But let's keep that minus and just ignore the ones in the narrative, and then we would have an 8 out of 9, and that's over 90% or a 9 out of 10. So you see where the points are going in and why the title of this video. So that's kind of the where I want to end it. Like I said, I talked a lot. It got a little bit longer than I thought it would be. So please let me know if you kinda enjoyed this content, if you liked how I the system, how I made the points. You of course can also talk about the endpoints, but I'm more interested if you kind of have more points, negative or positive points you want to add, and then maybe we can do let's say a second review with your points, and then look how it comes together with the percentage at the end, with the end score. Maybe it's higher, maybe it's even lower, I don't know. Yes, I would like to hear from you about these things. Or maybe if you would score some things different and things like that. So like I said, this video is really long. If you manage to come so far, then I think you just have to push the like button. Otherwise, why would you have stayed so long? And I thank you for watching, and I hope you watch some more of my videos.